It all started with paperwork. I know, not the most romantic setup, but that's the truth. I worked in logistics for a mid-sized company, and the HR department was right down the hall. Amanda was the one who handled all the contracts, benefits, forms, and new hire paperwork. She wasn't just any HR rep, though she was the kind of woman you notice immediately. Tall, elegant, with dark auburn hair that always looked like it belonged in some kind of shampoo commercial, and a smile that felt warm and untouchable all at once. She was married, of course. Figures, right? Someone like her, always put together, probably had a husband who sent her flowers on random Tuesdays and remembered all the anniversaries. So, I kept it professional. I'd walk into her office to drop off a form and leave with my heart racing, feeling like I'd just met royalty. She was on a first-name basis with everyone, cracking jokes with the warehouse guys and somehow making even the crankiest of us feel seen. And then she quit. No warning. No big announcement. One day she was there. The next day she wasn't. I heard some vague rumor about her wanting to focus on her family. Whatever the reason, her absence left this weird void in the office. I tried to shake it off. It wasn't like we were close, but her departure made work feel a little grayer, a little more routine. Fast forward a year, and I was gone. 2. New opportunities, better pay. You know the drill. I'd moved on, or so I thought. But then my younger brother Nate dropped her name out of nowhere during a random conversation. He still worked at the old company, and apparently, Amanda had come by to visit some friends there. She looks the same, man, Nate said, his face lighting up. Still got that whole classy vibe going on. You know, the one that makes everyone else look like they just crawled out of bed. I played it cool, asking questions like it was no big deal. Was she happy? How was her family? Oh, she's divorced now, Nate said casually. Like he just mentioned the weather. My heart skipped. Divorced. The idea felt surreal. Amanda. The perfect wife and mother, no longer married. It wasn't long before I was scheming. Nate's girlfriend, Claire, still worked at the company, and I convinced her to pass along my number. No pressure, I told her. Even though I was practically sweating through the phone. When Amanda texted me, I nearly dropped my phone. The first message was polite, formal even, but it didn't take long for our chats to take on a different tone. She was funny, sarcastic, even a little flirty in a way that surprised me. After a week, we agreed to meet for coffee. I wasn't prepared for what I saw when she walked into the cafe. She looked incredible. The same polished elegance, but there was a softness to her now, a vulnerability that made her even more magnetic. She was honest from the start, telling me she was nearly 10 years older than me. Did it bother me? Not in the slightest. If anything, it made her seem more grounded, more real. I need to be upfront about a few things, she said during that first coffee date, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup. I'm not looking for a conventional relationship. I've already had the white picket fence, the husband, the family plan. I'm past that stage of my life. She paused, her gaze locking on mine. I don't want any more kids, ever. If that's something you know you'll want someday, this probably isn't going to work. The air between us grew heavy. I nodded, trying to seem unaffected, but her words hit hard. I'd always figured I'd want kids eventually, but the thought of walking away from Amanda felt worse than giving up that abstract future. She kept going, her tone measured but firm. I don't want to tie you down. If you meet someone who feels like you're forever, I'll let you go. No drama, no bitterness. You're young, and I'm not going to stand in your way. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said what I felt right now. All I know is that I want to see where this goes. She gave me a small smile, and that was the beginning. We started seeing each other more often, and what began as casual meetups turned into something deeper, at least for me. I'd head over to her place after work, and we'd cook dinner together, drink wine, and talk about everything. Her childhood in Michigan, my years in college, her divorce, my dreams. It was easy, natural. Like we'd known each other for years, instead of just a handful of months. She had this way of looking at me, like I was the only person in the room. And when she laughed, really laughed, it wasn't the polite chuckle she used at work. It was loud, unguarded, and completely addictive. But then there was the other side of her, the side that kept me at arm's length in subtle ways. We didn't talk about the future. She never asked me to stay the night, and I didn't push it. And even though she introduced me to her son, Ethan, it was clear that she was cautious about how much of her world she was willing to share. Meeting Ethan was a big step. Though he was 6, a little shy but polite, with Amanda's big green eyes and the same quick wit. The first time we met, he was building a Lego spaceship in the living room. "This is Ethan," she said, her voice soft but firm, like she was trying to reassure both of us. Double quotes, "Hey buddy," I said, crouching down to his level. "That's a cool spaceship. Is it gonna fly to Mars?" He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "No, it's going to Jupiter. Mars is too close." I grinned, and Amanda smiled in that way that made my chest tighten. "Jupiter, huh? Aiming high." Ethan shrugged and went back to building. It wasn't exactly a hallmark moment, but it was a start. Over time, Ethan warmed up to me. We'd play catch in the backyard, build more Lego creations, and watch superhero movies together. Amanda would watch us from the kitchen, her expression a mix of happiness and something I couldn't quite place. It was during one of those movie nights that she set her rule in stone. "You know, this can't be permanent, right?" she said. After Ethan had gone to bed, we were sitting on her couch, her head resting on my shoulder. I could feel the weight of her words before she even said them. "You don't know that?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "I do." She sat up, her eyes serious. "You're young, Jake. Someday, you're going to want more. Marriage, kids, the whole thing. And I can't give you that. I won't." I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, but because I knew it wouldn't change her mind. She was convinced this was temporary, that I'd eventually move on. The thing was, I didn't want to move on. Being with her felt like finding the thing I didn't know I was searching for. She was smart, funny, passionate. She challenged me in ways no one else ever had. And yeah, the physical connection was insane, like next level. But it was more than that. She made me feel seen, like she understood parts of me I didn't even understand myself. Still, her words haunted me. Every time I was with her, there was this tiny voice in the back of my head whispering that she was right, that this thing between us was on borrowed time. And then there was everyone else. "You're wasting your time." "Man, Nate," said one. Night over beers. He'd been on my case about Amanda ever since he found out we were dating. At first, I thought it was just him being protective, but as time went on, it became clear that he genuinely didn't get it. "She's what, 10 years older than you? Divorced, with a kid." He shook his head like the whole thing was incomprehensible. "You're setting yourself up for heartbreak." "Thanks for the pep talk, Dr. Phil," I shot back, trying to keep the sarcasm in my voice. "I'm serious, Jake. You're 28. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Why tie yourself down to someone who's already made it clear this isn't forever?" I didn't have an answer for him. Not one that would make sense to anyone but me. Even my mom got in on the action. "You're dating who?" she asked during Sunday dinner. "Amanda. I told you about her before," I said, keeping my tone casual. "The HR woman from your old job." Her eyebrows shot up. "Jake, honey, she's got a child. Are you ready for that kind of responsibility?" I sighed, stabbing a piece of roast chicken with more force than necessary. "It's not like I'm adopting him, Mom. We're just taking things as they come." Taking things as they come became my go-to response whenever anyone questioned. But the truth was, I was in deep. Deeper than I wanted to admit. And Amanda knew it. One night, after we'd spent hours talking and laughing over takeout, she looked at me with this mix of affection and sadness. "I don't want to hurt you," she said quietly. "You won't," I promised. Even though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. She didn't respond, just leaned in and kissed me. It was soft, lingering, like she was trying to memorize the moment. I felt it then, that crack in the foundation. The cracks in the foundation were subtle at first. A missed text here, a lingering silence there. I told myself it was nothing. Amanda was busy between work, taking care of Ethan, and maintaining some semblance of a social life. She had a lot on her plate, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was slowly pulling away. Still, I ignored it. I was too far gone to think rationally. Every time I saw her, every time she smiled at me or laughed at one of my stupid jokes, it felt like a win. Like I was defying the odds just by being with her. But reality has a way of catching up. One Saturday, I swung by her house unannounced with Ethan's favorite donuts and a plan to surprise them both. When I got there, Ethan answered the door, his face lighting up when he saw the box. "Donuts," he shouted, running off to the kitchen. I stepped inside, expecting to find Amanda on the couch or in the kitchen. Instead, I found her standing at the bottom of the stairs, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. "Hey," I said, holding up the box like it was some kind of peace offering. "Jake, you can't just show up like this," she said. her tone gentle but firm. I blinked, caught off guard. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. Ethan seems happy about it. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. It's not about Ethan. It's about boundaries. We talked about this. Remember, I felt my stomach twist. She wasn't wrong. We had talked about it. She'd made it clear from the beginning that she needed her space, that she wasn't looking for a traditional relationship where we were in each other's pockets all the time. But hearing her say it now, seeing the distance in her eyes, it hit differently. I'm sorry, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. She softened a little, stepping closer and placing a hand on my arm. It's not that I don't want you here. It's just, I need to keep things balanced. For Ethan, for me, for you. We're already walking a tightrope, Jake. I nodded, even though her words felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I get it. And I did. At least, I thought I did. But later that night, as I lay in my apartment staring at the ceiling, doubts crept in. Was I really okay with this? With being the guy she saw when it was convenient, the one who got pieces of her, but never the whole picture. The next few weeks were a blur. Work was hectic, and Amanda and I fell into a rhythm of texts and brief meetups. We weren't fighting, but there was an unspoken tension between us. Like we were both waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then came the night that everything changed. We were at her place, sitting on the couch after Ethan had gone to bed. Amanda was scrolling through her phone while I flipped channels on the TV. It was a quiet, normal moment till it wasn't. Jake, she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the room. I turned to look at her, and the seriousness in her expression made my stomach drop. We need to talk. Those 4 words. They're like a bomb waiting to go off. And I knew whatever came next wasn't going to be good. Okay, I said cautiously, setting the remote down. She put her phone aside and turned to face me fully. I've been thinking a lot about us. About what we're doing. My throat felt dry, but I forced myself to nod. And, I don't know if this is fair to you, she said, her voice soft but steady. You're giving so much, and I feel like I can't give you the same in return. I'm trying to protect you, Jake. From me. From this. I stared at her, struggling to find the right words. I don't need protecting. I know what I signed up for. But do you? She asked, her eyes searching mine. You say that now, but what happens in a year, 2 years? What happens when you wake up one day and realize you want more than I can give you? Her words hit like a punch to the gut because part of me knew she was right. I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself. But there were nights when I lay awake thinking about the future, about the things I might never have. If I stayed with her, I don't care about any of that, I said, my voice more desperate than I intended. I care about you, about Ethan, about what we have right now. Amanda's face softened, and for a moment, I thought she might say something to reassure me. But instead, she just shook her head. You're an amazing man, Jake, she said, quietly, and you deserve someone who can meet you halfway. Someone who wants the same things you do. My chest tightened, and I felt this overwhelming urge to argue, to fight for us. But before I could say anything, she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't like our other kisses. This one was slow, bittersweet, and filled with a kind of finality that made my heart ache. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. But I can't keep holding you back either. I didn't know what to say. For the first time in my life, I felt completely helpless. After that night, everything shifted. Amanda didn't outright end things, but there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. Our once effortless conversations became stilted, filled with pauses and unsaid words. I could feel her slipping away, and no matter how hard I tried to hold on, felt like I was grasping at smoke. I kept telling myself that this was just a rough patch, that things would go back to the way they were. But deep down, I knew better. The breaking point came a few weeks later. It was a Friday night, and we were supposed to have dinner at her place. I'd been looking forward to it all week, but when I got there, something felt off. She was quiet, distracted, and even Ethan seemed to pick up on the tension. He barely said a word during dinner, his eyes darting between us like he was waiting for something to happen. After Ethan went to bed, Amanda and I sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy and uncomfortable. Is something wrong? I finally asked, unable to take it anymore. She hesitated, staring at the glass of wine in her hand. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, her voice soft but steady. My stomach dropped. I didn't need her to finish the sentence to know where this was going. Amanda. Please don't do this, I said, my voice cracking. Her eyes met mine, and I could see the pain there, the conflict. Jake, this isn't fair. To you, to me, to Ethan, we're trying to force something that doesn't fit. It does fit, I argued, my voice rising. Yes. It's not perfect, but nothing is. We can make this work if we just stop, she said, cutting me off. Jake, please, don't make this harder than it already is. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair as I tried to steady my breathing. You're giving up, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm being realistic, she replied, her tone firm but gentle. You deserve someone who can give you everything you want, someone who can be your equal partner, who can share your dreams. For the future. You're what I want, I said, my voice breaking. You and Ethan. That's all I've ever wanted. She looked away, tears welling in her eyes. And I love you for that, Jake. But love isn't always enough. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, to beg her to reconsider. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference. She'd already made up her mind. The rest of the night was a blur. I left her house feeling like I'd been hollowed out, like a part of me had been ripped away. For the next few days, I was a mess. I barely ate, barely slept. My friends tried to pull me out of it, but nothing they said or did could make me feel better. Jake, you've got to move on, Nate said one night over beers. I know it sucks, but this was always going to happen. She told you from the beginning that this wasn't forever. I don't want to hear it, I snapped, slamming my beer down on the table. He raised his hands in surrender. Fine, but at some point, you're going to have to face reality. Reality. That word felt like a slap in the face. The reality was that Amanda was gone, and there was nothing I could do to change that. A week later, I made the mistake of driving past her house. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe I just wanted to feel close to her, even if it was only for a moment. But when I saw another car in the driveway, my heart sank. It wasn't just any car. It was a sleek black sedan, one I didn't recognize. For a moment, I sat there in my own car, staring at the house like some kind of stalker. Then the front door opened, and I saw him, a tall, well-dressed man, stepping out with Amanda. They were laughing, their heads close together. And the sight of it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I drove away before they could see me, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. When I got home, I sat in the dark for hours, replaying the scene over and over in my head. I wanted to be angry, to hate her for moving on so quickly, but all I felt was sadness. She'd told me from the start that this wasn't forever. She'd warned me over and over again that she couldn't give me what I wanted. And now, as much as it hurt, I had to accept that she was right. The weeks after seeing Amanda with someone else were some of the hardest I've ever gone through. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was this deep, gnawing emptiness. She'd been such a big part of my life, and now that she was gone, I didn't know what to do with myself. For the first couple of weeks, I let myself wallow. I ignored texts from friends, skipped the gym, and survived mostly on takeout and bad TV. My apartment felt like a tomb, and every little thing reminded me of her. The bottle of wine we never finished, the playlist she made for our road trip. Last summer, the scent of her perfume lingering faintly on the jacket she borrowed and never gave back. I wanted to reach out to her so badly. I even typed out a dozen texts, but I deleted each one before sending it. What would be the point? She'd made her decision, and I wasn't going to beg for scraps. Eventually, Nate stepped in. All right, dude, this has gone on long enough, he said one Saturday afternoon. Barging into my apartment uninvited, I was sprawled on the couch, in sweatpants surrounded by empty takeout containers. Nate took one look at me and shook his head. You look like crap, he said bluntly. Thanks. Dr. Oz, I muttered, not even bothering to sit up. I'm serious, Jake. This isn't healthy. You've got to snap out of it. And do what? I snapped, glaring at him. Pretend like everything's fine. Like I'm not completely wrecked? No, he said, his tone softer now. But you can't keep living like this. You need to start moving forward, even if it's just one step at a time. I wanted to argue with him, but deep down, I knew he was right. So I started small. I cleaned my apartment, one room at a time. I went back to the gym, even though every rep felt like a battle. I started saying yes when my friends invited me out, even if I wasn't in the mood. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. There were still days when I woke up feeling like I'd been punched in the chest when the weight of missing her felt unbearable. But little by little, I started to feel like myself again. The turning point came a few months later, when I bumped into Claire girlfriend at a coffee shop. "Jake," she said, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Hey Claire," I said, forcing a smile. We made small talk for a bit, and then she hesitated, glancing around like she wasn't sure if she should say what was on her mind. "Have you heard from Amanda?" she asked cautiously. I froze, the sound of her name hitting me like a sucker punch. "No," I said finally. "Why?" "She came by the office a few weeks ago," Claire said, her tone careful. "She mentioned you." "Oh, that caught my attention. What did she say?" "She didn't go into details, but she looked different, like something was bothering her." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe that Amanda missed me, that she regretted letting me go. But another part of me knew that hoping for that would only drag me back into the same cycle of pain. "Thanks for telling me," I said finally. Claire nodded, giving me a sympathetic smile. "You're a good guy, Jake. You deserve to be happy, whether that's with her or not." Her words stuck with me, and over the next few weeks, I started to shift my focus. Instead of obsessing over what I'd lost, I began to think about what I wanted for myself. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and even signing up for a leadership course. I reconnected with old friends, people I hadn't seen much of since Amanda came into my life. And slowly but surely, I started to feel like I was building something again. One day, I came home to find a letter in my mailbox. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. "Amanda," my heart raced as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. Asterisk, Jake. I've been thinking about writing this letter for weeks, but I didn't know how to start. Now that I'm finally doing it, I still don't know if I'll find the right words. First, I want to say I'm sorry. Sorry for hurting you, for pushing you away, for not giving you the love you deserved. You were right, you did know what you signed up for, and I still didn't trust you enough to believe that. You were everything I didn't know I needed. You made me laugh, you made me feel alive, and you were so good to Ethan. I'll never forget that, but I also knew, deep down, that I couldn't be what you needed. I was too scared to let you in completely, too scared to take the risk of losing you later. I hope you're happy, Jake, truly, and I hope you find someone who sees how amazing you are and never lets you go. Love. Amanda, asterisk. I read the letter 3 times, my emotions swinging wildly between anger, sadness, something I couldn't quite name. In the end, I folded the letter and put it away. Not because I wanted to forget her, but because I knew it was time to let her go. Amanda's letter stayed tucked away in my nightstand, alongside other things I didn't have the heart to throw out. A photo of us at the park with Ethan. A bracelet she left at my apartment. The ticket stubs from a concert we went to last summer. I didn't look at them often, but knowing they were there felt like a quiet acknowledgement of the time we'd shared. Messy, complicated, but real. After reading the letter, something shifted in me. It wasn't like the pain suddenly disappeared, but it felt less sharp, like a weight I could finally begin to set down. Her words gave me a strange kind of closure. For the first time, I truly believed that what we'd had, while imperfect, had mattered to her just as much as it mattered to me, and that was enough to start moving forward. I dove headfirst into rebuilding my life. I got promoted at work, started volunteering at a local youth center, and even took a trip to Colorado with some friends. I didn't realize how much I'd been holding myself back until I started saying yes to things again, things I hadn't even considered. While I was wrapped up in Amanda's world, but the biggest change came about 6 months later. It was a crisp October morning, and I was at the local farmer's market picking up some fresh vegetables. I'd never been much of a farmer's market guy before, but one of my coworkers had raved about it, so I figured I'd give it a shot. That's when I saw her. She was standing at a booth, examining a basket of apples with this intense focus that made me smile. She had curly blonde hair tied up in a messy bun, a scarf wrapped around her neck, and an old leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. I don't know what it was about her, but something made me walk over. "Are those the best apples here?" I asked, surprising even myself. She looked up, startled at first, but then she smiled. "I have no idea. I've just been standing here pretending to know what I'm doing." I laughed, and the sound felt good natural. "Glad I'm not the only one. This is my first time here. I thought it'd be a good way to look like I have my life together." She grinned, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. Fake it till you make it, huh? Pretty much, I said, holding out my hand. I'm Jake. Lila, she said, shaking it. We ended up walking through the market together, talking about everything from favorite foods to terrible movies we secretly loved. She was funny, down-to-earth, and refreshingly open. When we parted ways, I couldn't stop smiling. I didn't know if it was going to go anywhere, but for the first time in a long time, felt hopeful. Lila and I started seeing each other casually, coffee dates, hikes, a few late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning. She was nothing like Amanda, and maybe that's what I needed. Where Amanda had been guarded, Lila was open. Where Amanda had kept her distance, Lila leaned in. It wasn't long before I told her about Amanda. Not all the messy details, but enough for her to understand why I was cautious. You don't have to explain, she said one night as we sat on her couch, a blanket draped over both of us. We all have scars, they just mean you've lived. Oh, her words stayed with me. Maybe it wasn't about forgetting Amanda or erasing the past. Maybe it was about carrying those scars with me, letting them shape me but not define me. One evening, months into my relationship with Lila, I found myself at Amanda's favorite coffee shop. It wasn't intentional. I'd been in the area and needed a caffeine fix. But as I sat there sipping my latte, I thought about her. I hoped she was happy. I hoped Ethan was thriving. And I hoped that, wherever she was, she'd found the peace she was searching for. As I left the coffee shop, I didn't feel the ache I'd been bracing for. Instead, I felt grateful for the time we'd had, for the lessons I'd learned, and for the chance to start over. Because for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't looking back anymore. I was looking ahead, and it felt good. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments side. Love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.